Welcome to 21st Century Polymath, and we are going to discuss about language and logic. And this is also another series we're going to be covering. You know, language is the most supreme science, in my view, as a polymath, as a 21st century polymath. Language is the most supreme science. It's because it is through language that we are able to pass down information. It is through language that we are able to record observations, to record realities, to store, you know, information. And without language, we would not be in school, we would not have education, we would not even prove that we were educated on something. So it's a very supreme science. And the world has over 6,000 languages. And that tells you how important language is in society. And that's just spoken and written language. We have not included body language. You know, body language is also envisaged through the animal, in the animal kingdom, which humans are a part of. You know, animals, they also communicate to one another. They may not have a spoken or written language, but they have a complex body language and phonetic, phonology, whereby you have certain sounds that, you know, mean something. They pass out a message. It's communication. So we belong to the school of thought that not only do humans communicate, but also animals communicate. And just like look at the cockerel when it crows, and it crows to show its dominance. It's sending out a message of dominance in its territory. And in the midst of the cock, there are young cocks who also see and hear what the big cock is doing. And so in the end, they also pick up that same strain. Of course, for some of these animals, because of their communication is very primitive, it naturally flows to them. But not all. They are not all cocks crow that much, and that's the whole point. Sometimes you measure domination of a cock by the number of times it crows, and there are some cocks which are not as dominant as others. So anyway, that comes through observation, and that's observation of a language. Body language. You observe it, and you hear it, and you also, the phonetic language or the phonological languages, like what we see in very many animals, dolphins, cocks, birds. Those ones we get them from hearing and then observing the actions the animals perform. And then we have the body language, which is necessary. It's not necessarily phonetic or no phones, no sound, but movements of certain body parts that let you know that, oh, okay, there's a message that has just been relayed. And we see this in monkeys. They are very good. The primates family. They're very good at body language, even though they're close to us genetically. They don't, but they don't have any written speech. They only have spoken. And the spoken is mostly phonological, not necessarily words, because that's what spoken is all about. It's about words, not sound, which is phonological. So this is going to be the series of language and logic, because where there's body language, there is logic. Where there's a language, there is logic. And where there's language, there's also knowledge. Because if your language is limited, you have a limited scope about certain things, it means you are also limited in the knowledge of that thing. So you find some very many languages in the world do not have names for certain new items we have in the world. And this is what we call, sometimes you find like the computer. We have 6,000 languages in the world, but how many of those languages have translated the word computer? You see? So there is a deficit, language deficit in some languages. And so this language deficit translates into a knowledge deficit in that language setting. And so this is why I prefer English, because English is a language that is liberal and accepts change and is always going through change and creating new words that become, part of the system. So it keeps English a growing language because of the new inventions man is making. And then we also have what we're going to do in this language and logic series. We're going to discuss the difference between scientific language and religious language, because you find religion and science, they are compatible. I know that sounds strange to very many people, but it's not strange if you look at it very closely, because both religion and science try to seek out truth or explain truth. And what is truth? Truth is reality. Truth is reality. It's the evidence of reality. And it's a state of reality. And what you have is that now when you have truth, you have knowledge, and knowledge is science. So basically, science is truth, because science, means from the Latin, which means knowledge. So the science of trees is the knowledge of trees, and it's the truth of trees. And the science of let's say God is called theology, because that's where you get logos. Logos is the Greek word for knowledge, which in Latin is sincere, or now where we get science, to know, and conscience, knowing. So in my view, 21st century polymath, truth is science, and religion always claims that it has the truth or is seeking the truth, and science is basically about seeking truth and finding truth and knowing truth, because truth is all about principles. It's all about conclusions and sentences and laws. And so if you compare the two, they're compatible, but because of historical conflicts between religious groups and scientists, especially in the Western world, the Western world, which has happened to conquer the world system. The world system is generally Western. So the bifurcation of religion and science is very prominent in most countries in the world. But before the colonization of the world by the West, most non-Western regions had religion one with science. There was no bifurcation, and the religious people were the scientists of the day. Look at ancient Egypt. The priests were the doctors, and they would perform surgeries. They would perform, and they would do the embalming of the dead, and especially, the dead, the royal, the noble dead people. And yeah, so because at that time the priest was seen as the one who should know everything, and knowledge is science, so they were the scientists. But as time went on, Christianity came about, and Christianity changed that view, because Christianity was about seeking God knowledge, rather than what was considered earthly knowledge. There was that bifurcation they created, that earthly knowledge is not our zone. And so what happened is, when Constantine took over Rome, the Roman world, and he made Christianity a state religion, it was when now this Christianized thought that God knowledge or theology is what should take center stage. And of course there was a revolt, and that was during the Renaissance, whereby those people who were seeking knowledge outside from the Bible, outside from the church setting, and this caused the deists and the atheists that came out in the Voltaires, and then finally the French Revolution, and blah blah blah. And history finally gave us the bifurcation between scientists and the church, or scientists and religious people. That's the Western world. And then what happened is, after that, the Western world now conquered the non-Western world and tried to change certain non-Western places, and they did to some great extent. Africa, South America, parts of America, North America, they were changed because they managed to put the Western system there, and so the bifurcation between science and religion happened. But when you go to Asia, it was a different story. There was a lot of revolt, and so the Western colonization of the Asian world was not that successful, because they still kept their religions, they still kept their sciences. And like Hinduism, the religion was one with science, in the sense that the healers were religious, were considered very religious, serious religious people. So it was more or less like the ancient Egyptian time, where religion and science were one. And that also applies to Buddhism. China, that has become Christian after years of, or it's trying to be, but still is what you call Buddhist, because the Western colonization did not tamper with the religious mindset. And as I've said, the monks were considered the doyens of knowledge, the doyens of science. And this is the same, it's just the same as ancient Egypt, where religion and science were one. So, with that kind of rough riding through history, why now talk about language? Well, you see, in scientists seek truth using language, and religion also purveys truth using language. So that's the common bond, and we want to see how both of those schools of thought deal with language. And I prefer how the scientists deal with language, because what scientists do is that, of course they have the hypothesis, there's a whole system, scientific method. Thank you, Francis Bacon, for that. And whereby you have to have a conclusive, your conclusions have to be based on experiments that can be repeated by somebody else and produce the same results. Now, that is what scientific language is all about. It's that ability to repeat what has been recorded, what has been found to be truth, and get the same result. Now, if you don't get the same result, then that which is called truth is not truth. It's just a theory, it's just an assumption. That would be a bit crude, but that's near to what I'm trying to say. And then but in religion, if I saw a stone drop in the sky and I write it down, because I'm a prophet, it is truth. No one is going to fight me because of my title. But if it was somebody else who is considered maybe not so holy, people would question it and say, nah, that it can't be true. Do you see him? He doesn't have spiritual authority. So in religion, not all religions, but most of them, the the language is authoritative, not because of you repeating what was done, but from whom, the source of the information. So if the source comes from a prophet, someone who is called a man of God, who can do miracles, then it's considered truth and it's not questioned. But in science, you have a peer review whereby they will panel beat your theory until truth is got from it. So um, that is the difference between scientific language and religious language. And what is so funny is that scientific language tells you the truth, and religious language also says they're telling you the truth. So it's up to you to choose which side you want to be on. And I prefer a side that proves to me has gone through a lot of sifting and a lot of panel beating, and that is seen in the scientific realm, other than the religious realm, where, of course, they will also tell you, I did this, and it can also work out for you. And when you try it out, 80% it doesn't work out for you, so you wonder, what did I do wrong? And you go back to the religious person and they'll tell you, oh, well, you did this A, B, C, D, E, F, G, so go back again and try. But in science, what Einstein did, if you do it, you will get the same result. And what Isaac Newton did, if you do it, you will get the same result. So it's clearer. So this is just an introduction to how we're going to talk about language and logic and the differences between the two. It won't be a very long series, but we just want to emphasize the supremacy of language in knowledge getting, because obscured language will give you obscured knowledge, and but clear language will give you clear knowledge, and that's what we're going to be doing throughout this series. And we hope you'll enjoy, and you can also still follow us on Polymath's web on WordPress, and also our Twitter handle, Nagas Arthur, and we're there. The link is there to the website. So enjoy your day. Remember, knowledge is power. Go get it.